Hello, people of the world. It's Philip Wilkerson. For those that are members of Alpha, I'm Brother Philip Wilkerson, and we're here with another edition of Voteless People, Hopeless People, Black Male Voter Awareness webinar. We hosted one of these webinars back in August before our national election, and we thought the conversation still needs to continue. And so, in partnering with our chapter, Theta Rho Lambda, seated in Arlington and Alexandria, we wanted to come back for discussion about voter participation and voter engagement. But while we get started, before I want to open with have our president of Theta Rho Lambda, Keith Lang, open us with some remarks and some comments, and then we'll have like a little brief conversation as people jump in. So here you go. Thank you, Brother Lang, for joining us.
Thank you, Brother Wilkerson, for that introduction. My name is Keith Lang. I'm the president of the Theta Rho Lambda chapter of Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, seated in Arlington and Alexandria, Virginia. On behalf of the chapter, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this event. We want to thank our partners, the Positive Philter podcast and Progress for All. As you all know, Virginia has elections every year. We have an important governor's race coming up that is already underway. So we definitely did not want this to be a every 4 years discussion around the presidential election. We want it to be an ongoing discussion. We hope you find the items discussed tonight informative, and we hope that you will come away from this call determined to make a plan to have your voices heard in every election going forward as a Black man.
Thank you, Brother Lang. Thank you, Brother Lang, for those comments. And so I'm going to introduce kind of my co-moderator for the night. We're still waiting for Brother John Chapman to join us. I think he's here to do introductions, and Delegate Michael Fegans to join us. I think they're joining us and getting set up. But joining me is the chair of our chapters, Voteless People, Hopeless People, Brother Peters.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Peters. As previously discussed, I am the chair of the Voteless People is a Hopeless People Committee for the Theta Rho Lambda chapter of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I'm also the founder and director of a 501c3 organization called Progress for All that is primarily dedicated to voter education on various ballot measures and other issues. And what we have done previously during the 2024 election cycle we've done a Black male voter outreach event similar to what is about to transpire before you this evening, where we tried to talk about issues with Black male voters, and we invited public officials to the event, some of which you may recognize and see again tonight. So with that, I will hand it back to Brother Wilkerson to continue.
Yes, thank you, Brother Peters. And I know Brother Lang has to cut out, but I want him to, join us for a little bit as he can. And then, he'll have to depart. But we do have with us on the line to join us is our good fraternity brother, Alexandria City Councilman, Brother John Chapman. And so thank you, Brother John Chapman, for joining us tonight. Hope you're doing well. AKA the Nightmare. That's his nickname for those that don't know. But Brother Chapman, please, if you can introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers, and let's just have this conversation about what's going on this November. Oh, he dropped off.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Let's see. Is he jump back on? Well, he might be having some technical difficulties. So while Brother Chapman tries to jump back on, Brother Lang, understanding that we're seated in Virginia, and how important is this election, particularly this November, and what issues as a Black man do you think we should be aware of this November?
Well, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, Virginia has elections every year. We are unique in that we can only elect governors to 1 4-year term. We are, I believe, the only state in the country where the governors cannot run for re-election. They are allowed to run in subsequent elections, but they cannot run for immediate re-election like most other states. So we have an open seat race every 4 years. The Virginia and New Jersey are the two major states, I think maybe Kentucky as well, where we elect our governors in a cycle a year after the presidential race. Most other states are voting 2 years after the presidential race. So this race will be closely watched as one of the first major contests of the Trump era. We're coming off an election that was decided by a little over 200,000 votes in 3 states out of 140 plus million votes cast. And we see all the change that election has brought. This is an opportunity for us in Virginia to register our opinion about what's going on, not just in the state, but in the nation's capital, which is our neighbor.
Right. Well, I think we do have one person in the line. Brother Fagans, can you hear us on your end before I jump you on screen? A thumbs up? Just a thumbs up? I think you can. So, hello, brother. How are you?
Doing good, brother. How you living?
Okay, good. We got one. All right.
Yep.
So we do have a state delegate with us, and as you were hearing, our brother Keith Lang asked him just as an opening question, and maybe wanted this to be an opening question. I think for context, we did this webinar in October to ramp up for the election that we just had for the president.
Yeah.
But now the work needs to continue. And so, in your opinion, what is important about this election that we have in November, and what issues should Black men be thinking about as we go into this election cycle?
So the important thing is, and so hello everybody. I'm Delegate Fagans. I represent House District 97 in Virginia Beach, the middle portion of Virginia Beach. Served for 20 years in the Air Force. Retired in 2021. Ran for office right after that. I've been elected for the past 2 years, and I have the great privilege of representing Virginia Beach, and also a member of Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I'm created out of Alpha Phi Lambda down here in Hampton Roads area, in Norfolk, Virginia Beach. When we look at what's going to be on the line this fall, there's a lot of people that don't realize that there's only 2 states really that have consequential elections, and that's Jersey and that's Virginia. And really, Virginia is going to be the bellwether for a lot that's going to be happening. The test case is going to be put into Virginia. The money, the resources, the attention is going to be on Virginia. And so if you want to know how much your vote really matters, vote this year. We have 100 seats that are up in the House of Delegates. We have the Attorney General, we have the Lieutenant Governor, and we have the Governor. All that is going to decide so much. Over the past 2 years, I passed 13 bills. Many of those focused on protecting our veterans, supporting families, education, the environment, and supporting small business. But one of the things that's really important, I believe, for Black men, is going to be, because so many of our brothers and sisters have been disenfranchised from voting, and that's going to be the constitutional amendment to restore voting rights. This year, we voted on 3 constitutional amendments: reproductive freedom, the right to marry who you love, and the right to have your vote restored after you've served your penalty. So much of it in the Commonwealth of Virginia has been on the whims of a governor. Some governors have done a great job. Some governors have not done such a great job of restoring individuals' rights once they pay their debt to society. And there's no better way for an individual to become part of their society after serving a sentence than to have the right to vote. And so this year we have 100. Like I said, we have 100 seats up. If individuals within our chamber, as a Democrat, are able to go back next year and we have the control of the House, we will be reintroducing that constitutional amendment again. The great thing about constitutional amendments in Virginia is that the governor, no matter what party they are, has no part in the process. It has to pass once, and then has to pass twice again within an election in between, and then ultimately those in the Commonwealth of Virginia ultimately decide what happens with that constitutional amendment. So if you want to talk about what's really important to a lot of our brothers in the community, that have been affected by over policing, over criminalizing of issues sometimes, and not having their rights restored. That is one of the important things that's going to be on the ballot this year.
Yeah, thank you so much, brother. And that was really informative. And I think that it really highlighted the importance. And so, Brother Chapman, you joined us back. I want to ask this question, and then, we'll have an open dialogue. But the question I asked earlier was, we had a discussion in November. Obviously, we're in a new time, and people think the fight is over. But we have a major election coming up in this November for the state of Virginia. And so what issues, why is this important, this election that we have in November, and what issues as Black men should we be aware of? We just heard from our other guests about making sure voter rights are still restored and not taken away.
Mm-hmm.
What are some issues that we think as Black men we should be focusing on?
Let me hit you with a timely one. And I do think this not only is for Black men, the Black community, it is really the Trump administration's attack on federal workers. Let me talk about that. While that doesn't seem very race or Black men specific, we know that a lot of Black families historically, particularly in our area in Northern Virginia, have relied on government work to be able to live a middle-class lifestyle, frankly. Whether it's Black men, Black families, Black women, that federal job, the stability around it has been something that's anchored a lot of Black families in and around the DC metro area, and that is under attack. This administration has very boldly and cut at will just randomly, and are continuing to do so in a way that is frankly just cruel and not well thought out. We have had folks, if folks can remember, the Clinton administration did some cutting of the federal government and cutting of some jobs, but it was very focused. And it was intentional. This is not intentional. This is at random. With what Elon is doing, he's not even part of the government, and he's been given the keys to kind of cut and dice the federal government, and that is going to have, and it has had, a massive effect on Northern Virginia families and particularly the Black community. We don't talk about it, but a lot of folks in our area have good government jobs, right? And so attacking that and frankly putting people in a petrified state, not knowing when the next cut is going to happen, what their job future might be, and with what we're seeing from attempts to rebound, meaning folks who have been fired and trying to find a job that equates in salary and skill, those jobs are not necessarily out there. I actually had the pleasure of speaking in front of Brother Fagans yesterday about some of the concern we have in Northern Virginia. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, because he's on an emergency committee that's looking at the cuts that we've taken from the Trump administration as a state, and what can be done, and how do we survive this? Because as was stated yesterday, Virginia is the number one state as it relates to the impact that the federal government has in terms of jobs and contracts. And so this means a whole lot for the state, but it also means a whole lot for Northern Virginia Black families. And so I think that's a very timely and necessary issue. Education is also one as well, with what we're seeing at the Department of Ed. We understand, and I understand locally, that we have a number of our young people and our families that are in special ed that do need additional supports. Brother Wilkinson, you might know about that at the higher ed level, right? We need to make sure that the government is following up with the funding and resources for supporting our young people. And as Black men, that want our community and our families to be strong, these are areas of need. We also can talk about the workforce and the number of jobs and high paying quality jobs that we want to make sure are available for our community. But you know, I'm as a Black man, my number one focus is my family, right? If I've decided to start a family, decided to have kids, I want to make sure the future's there for them. And this administration is putting that future in jeopardy, the quality of that future. My son is going to start kindergarten in the fall. And so I want to make sure he has the best supports for his educational experience if he's going to go to public school. I want to make sure there are some jobs for him lined up when he comes out of school. What we're doing with institutions, particularly HBCUs, and the attack that they're under with this administration is scary. And so, as Black men, I think we have a role to play in making sure the future of our community, the future of our families, is not at risk, because this administration is doing what it can to attack all of those strong supports for our community.
Well, thank you. And brother Peter's going to get a question, but thank you. And I just wanted to say to both of you, you touched on so much that's hitting all the ecosystem of Virginia, right? And it doesn't just touch government, touch education, all these arms. So there's some consequences that. Yeah, brother Peters.
Yes. Again, thank you and welcome, Delegate Fagans and Councilman Chapman, both brothers, for speaking to the issues that are relevant to our community, particularly to the Black men in our community. It really does feel as if this is something I was discussing with someone the other day, as if the economic oxygen is being snuffed out of the Black community. And that is particularly important for Black men who want to be the breadwinners of the family, if you will, and how it's difficult to find a job in this environment, whether you are a federal worker, working government or private sector. It's difficult to create a job because of an environment that is almost hostile to contractors who are trying to start small businesses and contract with the federal government. So those issues have been touched on. You also touched upon the issue of education and people talking about DEI and a culture war that seems to be waged against us, and that effort's been ramped up. Could you speak to, both of you, either one of you, the issue of erasure? I mean, we are in Northern Virginia, and right where I'm at in Arlington, I am a hop, skip, and a jump from the Pentagon. And we all remember when they took a Black Vietnam Congressional Medal of Honor winner off of the DoD website. They put up a 404 page with a URL that said DEI Medal of Honor, or that they recently removed one of our greatest heroes, Harriet Tubman, from the website for the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And then after much political pressure and uproar, they put her back as well. Could you speak to that culture war that seems to be going on in the country that should definitely get each and every person, particularly Black man, off of the couch for 25 as well as 26?
I'll speak to it quickly, and I'll let Brother Chapman speak. From a veteran, this is something it's a continuation of something that's been going on from the time that we served. Black men, Black women have served this country long before we were even considered citizens of this country. Black men and Black women were kept from having the same Montgomery GI Bill, VA, veterans benefits for a long time. So this is a continuation of many individuals who, and I experienced it during my career, that no matter how well you serve, because we all know that we always have to do 2, 3, 5 times better to be seen as the average. And so there's nothing more disrespectful than having someone like Jackie Robinson removed from the history roles. To see that individuals at books are being removed from the Naval Academy that speak about slavery, to speak about the evils of what it was, that removes our history. It is all by design. Today, me and my colleagues here in Virginia Beach just wrote a letter to our Virginia Beach Virginia Beach School Board, because they decided that they were going to be the first public school system in Virginia to say, yes, we're going to agree with the Trump administration about removing DEI. But that removing DEI is more than just removing 3 letters. It's removing history. It's whitewashing what's happened in the past. It's sanitizing so much that's happened. And it's all by design. And the only way that, and I've talked about it, recently, the only thing that we can do here in the Commonwealth of Virginia is to embrace 2 words that have always been dirty across the South, and that's states' rights. States' rights are going to be the only way we are going to be able to endure the next 3.5 years. States' rights are going to be the only way for us to be able to have any type of protections against an overreaching federal government.
Brother Chapman, you have something to add?
Absolutely. I believe Brother Fagans is 100% correct. On that last point, it is really going to be us as a state being much more progressive and fighting back against the federal government, because this version of the federal government is not one that works for the diverse population that is the Commonwealth of Virginia. The attacks that we're seeing are straight out of the fascist playbook. That's just what it is. People, we were not around, or not born at the time of the world wars. But sorry, my light is actually acting up now.
All right.
We weren't around during World War II. We weren't around to see Hitler. But this is out of the playbook of that fascist. What we're seeing now totally is. I had a chance not too long ago to go to our sister city in France, and there they have a museum that talks about France's role in World War II and documents a lot of that history. And it is scary to see. And back then, it is being run now, advertising history, and on othering people, and not focusing on the value of diversity, the value of including people. I'll tell brothers here, don't let folks make DEI just an acronym. Make them say it out what it is. It is diversity. It is equity. It is inclusion. Those are really themes of what has made America great. And I don't mean to say that as a Trump make America great again, but our diversity is what has made us a world power. Inclusion allows everybody to take advantage of the successes of America. I mean, think about all the work that has been done over generations to allow folks with disabilities to have a quality life. And now the the, the federal administration does not want to support that, doesn't want to keep that going. Again, as Brother Fagan said, it is far beyond just the diversity around African Americans. This administration is attacking everything that we as a country are and have built ourselves to be. And so, what I think, to your question, Brother Peters, what is going to get brothers up off the ground, up off the floor, up off the couch, to really get engaged? I mean, this is the civil rights fight. Our enemies who are against our civil rights have modernized their attack. I think we need to modernize our pushback on it. We need to make sure our time and talents are spent in growing our community, because that's what's going to allow us to push back. And then as we grow our community, making sure that we have say and impact within our state is necessary. Making sure folks are connecting with the state leaders, like Brother Fagans, that are making stuff happen at that level and using our voice to make our impact known. I think it's disgraceful what our governor has done in trying to be a puppet for this Trump administration, especially around DEI. I think we have a necessary need to take back our universities. If you are going to a state institution, if you're going to a private institution in Virginia, honestly, you need to continue to talk about the diversity that you bring to the table as a Black man. We should not shy away from that. It is who we are. It is what makes us great. It is what makes us special, and allows us to have a different perspective in our communities. And that community perspective is necessary. I know that's a long-winded way of answering your question, but I feel strongly about it, as does Brother Fegans, that within our state, we have a unique opportunity to have political power and say so about how we are going to respond to the Trump attacks.
Thank you. And then, Brother Fagans, you said something very early on that this is a very consequential election. One, I would like you to expand upon that. That we're, consequential for those that are not familiar with just how this whole thing works. And then my second question for you too is then, thinking about federal to state, do you think that we have, I guess, the cushion to do this fight? Like it's going to be a lot of money. It's got a lot of resources. You'll see the overarching pressure from outside the state influencing it. But I've always said too, within our own, we can kind of ride out this storm as a state. So maybe talk about that too, about how important this is statewide and how the state level can really show the country and other states what to do and be a model for that.
Yeah, and so before I even get to that, we as brothers are literally leading the state. Think about this: like the third highest ranking person in the state government is Brother Don Scott. Brother Don Scott and me just finished doing a fundraiser a few minutes ago. That's why I'm in a car right now, because my race is the most important race in the House of Delegates to make sure we secure it. My race was the one that decided and made him the Speaker of the House. And so when you're looking at it, you're looking at it from the importance of the Commonwealth, but also looking at it from the importance of that alphas are leading at the state level, at the city level, like Brother Chapman, and he's leading in multiple areas, like so many others. I say that to say that we have an untapped resource right now within our own chapters of influence, of power that's not being fully executed. If every single chapter, and I love what National has done. I don't know if y'all seen it, how upfront National has become in saying if something's wrong, calling it out. If President Trump is doing something wrong and it's hurting Black men and hurting Black families, they're calling it out. And that's and there's always different ways in terms of making sure that we're not that the chapters are not getting above regional and everything. But we have a lot that we are always doing, and we have to figure out how are we going to fully flex our power in this year when we have an alpha man leading the House of Delegates, when we now have two, brother Alex Askew just crossed this year. We now have 3 alphas in the House of Delegates. We have and Brother Askew sits on appropriations, which means we have an alpha that's part of controlling the money. I'm on labor and commerce and transportation and public safety, and I'm on the emergency committee. With that, we have to look at, when we were talking about just, we're going into barbershops, we're going to beauty salons like we always do. But I love what Brother Chapman was talking about, just in terms of, and everyone talking about, we can't just, we're in civil rights 2.0, but we can't use the same civil rights playbook in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that work, But there's a lot of things that, you think about it right now. The young brothers and sisters right now that are in school, either high school or college, their great grandparents were in the civil rights movement. So they might not have anybody. You can't go up and say, and that's something I talk about my team when we knock on doors. Do not go up to young people and say, hey, your mom, your dad, your ancestors fought for, the right for you to vote. It's not, it doesn't galvanize the same way, because they can't, it doesn't hit, because I know I can visualize my grandmother was potentially part of it. They can't visualize someone that they never met. It's like seeing Brother Douglas, it's a historical figure, but it doesn't hit the same. And so we have to come up with new innovative ways. And a lot of it's talking about, it really is saying, what are we doing financially? And I say financially to put money in brothers and sisters' pocket. So for example, we passed a budget amendment this year that gave $15 million for first-time homeowners, $10,000 tax grant, $10,000 grant for you to potentially buy your first home. The governor vetoed that. So when people are like, "What are you doing for us?" I'm like, "Well, when I go into a barbershop and veto, I was like, do you own a home? No. Would you like to buy one? Yes. Well, I just tried to put $10,000 directly into your pocket. The person on the other side of the aisle vetoed that. I'm trying to help you out to buy your first home, because we know what home ownership means in the Black community, in terms of being able to elevate that, be able to create that generational wealth. That's what we're going to be doing in the House of Delegates this year. That's what we're going to be doing if we're able to get, for example, I'm endorsing personally Abigail Spanberger. I'm personally endorsing Aaron Rouse, and I'm personally endorsing Jay Jones for Attorney General. But for whoever you're supporting at the state levels, support someone that's trying to directly talk to our voters and talk about how we're going to make our lives better. I had Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger directly in barbershops in Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, directly talking with voters. And we had a D9 event directly just for her, where she could sit down with D9 leaders across Hampton Roads, and they told her directly what's happening. That's what we have to do. We have to make sure we're demanding from our statewide candidates, from our local elected officials, what is your plan to make your community better?
And then, and with that economic and intellectual capital that alphas bring, particularly, all the different spheres, that would also like protect us from like just the chaos of the world outside of us, right? And I'm thinking about all these Virginia issues. It's almost like, and I was like, how do you, sometimes if you look at the whole world, it can be overwhelming. So you try to like suck in and think about like your neighborhood, and I don't know if that's a negative or bad concept to think about,
like
right in front of your face.
Yeah, right now, brother, like the country has a cold. Virginia has a terrible flu that's going to put us, because we are, and Brother Chapman broke this down so well. Our economy is so ingrained with the federal government, especially in Northern Virginia, especially in Hampton Roads. We lose 5 to 10,000 jobs. That's 5 to 10% unemployment. That's the tax base going away. I just finished talking with somebody who said their father lost their job for the federal government, and they're going to move away. So we're losing tax base. We are deeply ingrained with the federal government, and we know how much, as was talked about, how important federal work has been for the Black community, about being able to create, not just be able to create middle class, that upper middle class that's seen in Northern Virginia, that's seen in PG County, about what it means to be able to rise up through the ranks as a GS employee, and not have to worry about doing the normal things that happen in business, about that I didn't golf with this person, or things like, no, if you do the work, if you're competent, and that's what we do, you can rise up and create a life for yourself. And that is directly what they're cutting at. They're cutting at us trying to create a livelihood for ourselves when we've been trying to grab at scraps for our whole entire lives.
Right. Right. Uh, to your point, all politics is local. Also, what happens over there, wherever there is, happens over here. There is an issue of gentrification in DC. There's also an issue of gentrification in Green Valley in Arlington. I just came from a county board meeting the other day, this past weekend, where they are concerned about displacement of folks as a result of a new development that's occurring. This is happening wherever we are. And that's something that we definitely have to be concerned about. And to your previous point about appealing to the younger generation, I remember hearing from my grandmother, who used to volunteer for NAACP during those civil rights days, that we, meaning her generation, went through that struggle so that you, my generation, I'm Gen X, by the way, no matter how young I may look, so that my generation would not have to endure that same struggle. You know, that's one of the things that I remember Barack Obama saying on the campaign trail a while back, that he was born 10 years too late for the civil rights movement. But here we are right in the midst of a major fight for our civil and economic rights. So it's like we're all right on time, no matter what generation you're from. So how are you reaching out to the younger generation with an authenticity that connects with them, understanding that you may not be of that same cohort that they are a part of, and saying to them that, yeah, you know, you may not have to deal with the kind of stuff that grown folks dealt with back in the day, but you still have these new challenges that you have to deal with. And they, if you're not careful, will turn it around on you, and you will be back in the day dealing with some of that same stuff. That's for either one of the panels.
Yeah, so I try to chat with young people in a couple different ways. I routinely go into the schools and just talk about my experience and who I am, and because I want to personalize and normalize them making a difference in their community. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have a 4.0 GPA. You don't have to be involved in all these sports or activities in order to make a difference in your community, and meaning getting involved, using your voice and your platform and sharing your perspective as a young person. I think that is extremely powerful. Many times, with some of the work that we do, it's all adults in the room talking about issues for children, versus having a space for young people to express what they're seeing, what they're not seeing, what programs are working, what programs aren't working, and how they need to be communicated to. And so trying to let them know there are those opportunities to engage with elected officials and other community leaders, I think is a big need, and that's one I've been trying to fill. Um, Also, in one of my passions is sharing history. I think as every time we have the opportunity to share history with our young people, we should do it, regardless if they fully engage in it and understand it or not. I think we all can think about stories we've heard of our past, whether it's local or bigger issues in history. As we continue to hear them, we connect with them more. And so telling local Black history for me is necessary, uh, particularly for our young people, as they don't necessarily see the same neighborhoods that I saw growing up. They don't meet the same, local civil rights heroes that I knew growing up, but they need to still know that there were times here back in the 80s and 90s where things were out of alignment, where racism popped up. And as you talked about, Brother Peters, fighting against gentrification, and talking about the need to create local policy and state policy as well that helps to slow gentrification and allows people to be a part of new development and the new creation of communities. Regardless of their income level, regardless of their background, I think that is necessary for the diversity in our communities. So these communities communities can thrive and not be kind of single-minded about what the world looks like.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, Brother Chad made a lot of great points. For when we're talking about, talking with the next generation. So I'm an elder millennial, and so I make sure to, when we're talking with the Gen Zs and now the Gen Alphas, the best thing that resonates is the fact of like using your authentic voice. Like they are really, really adept about being able to break down if you're talking like a politician or if you're talking real. And the one thing I've had to learn, I'm learning it now, is that, and I actually I got it from seeing how the other side communicates. The other side communicates by not having to worry about being right. They don't worry about facts. They don't worry about being true. They don't worry about if it's even like legally attainable. So what I try to do is not try to use their playbook on that, but try to speak in an authentic voice and not be so worried about having every single thing correct. That when you're talking with individuals, that everybody, no matter what their race or creed or their socioeconomic or political, everybody wants a lot of the same things. They want safe communities, they want clean water, they want their kids to have a great education, and they want to be able to move up in mobility in life. Everybody wants that. So once you speak to them about, this is what do you want out of those 4 or 5 things, and what can I do to make that better? Or maybe I've already tried to do it and you didn't even realize it. Because that's what I learned a lot about, is that we pass so much great legislation here. We just finished talking about it. People make Hulu and Netflix series about senators and congressional members. You don't make Netflix series about Delegate Fagans and Senator such at the House level, because it's not sexy. Congress is sexy. House of Delegates and City Council is not sexy unless you're gonna get unless you're gonna get like a great screenwriter behind it. So we do a lot of great work at the General Assembly, and then that work is executed at the school board and city council level. But it's sometimes not seen because it's just not attractive, and because like unfortunately the media ecosystem decides not to cover it the same way. They'll cover 15-20 minutes of a congressional member yelling and da da da, but they won't talk about the laws that I passed 4 bills this year to help veterans out. I passed a bill, we passed a lot of great legislation to help out the environment that's directly helping out Black and brown communities. But it's just not talked about. So what we have to do is we have to take our voice and talk directly to them, and forget about having to get on MSNBC or CBS. And we have to use our phones and our devices and talk directly to these kids, no matter if they're a kid or they're a kid at heart. And that seems to be that is how the revolution is going to be televised, through us directly talking to individuals and not having to worry about the traditional media.
I love it. I actually love that. It's kind of like, I think about the voice and podcasting and all that, taking control of your voice and getting it out there. So thank you. And thinking about, I've always used this term and hired the hidden curriculum, right? Like there's this hidden veil of learning the ins and outs of politics, until I had conversations with Brother Chapman, just being my normal friend and frat brother. And I learned all this ins and outs about what's going on here. And I was like, wow, like this is just, I didn't think it's just meetings. I've been to a chapter meeting. They do the same thing of voting on stuff, right? Like it's not, as you said, sexy. It's like there's a veil and it's a hidden curriculum to that. I think my question for both of y'all too is, I've still heard, and there's always a constant issue in Black, white, other, maybe general, voters, is this apathy to even voting. I think it's still, we know that so many votes were left on the table in the national election. We know that every single year, so many votes. There's an apathy to the system, to getting in, to voting, to exercising your voice. And we use things like, I think to Brother Chapman's point, our ancestors bled, sweat, and they died for our right to vote. I don't think that really gets and resonates all the time. They're like, oh yeah, that's way long ago. So what can we really do to really get just a larger move the needle on just participation? And maybe I'm misinformed. Is Virginia doing really well? And I'm just like kind of over exaggerating, but what that's one of the things I've always voted in every single election because of the model was set for me by my dad, right? And I saw my dad, and he goes to polling. He's a poll officer, and just right in front of my face. And so I just thought that was a duty. That's something I always do. I never thought of as that wasn't even crossed my mind as an excuse not to vote. But I see a lot of apathy there, and I hear about it. I see that I work at George Mason. I see it on this college campus. Like, did you vote? No. Okay. Like, why? So what can we do about that, brothers?
Yeah, and so, I do want to make sure that we give credit to who has always held us down. Our sisters have continually held at least for me, the Democratic Party down year after year after year after year. So our sisters understand the assignment, even with the fall off last year of the election. Black men were still the highest voting bloc for the Democratic Party. So, but the fall off that we saw is, for one reason or another, was understandable because there were so many men who were disillusioned with what was happening in the economy. That while the economy might have been great for a lot, it wasn't translating. And so what I say is that one of the solutions is that we for my campaign, we had a year round campaign. I never stopped campaigning. When I say campaigning, is I was never not in the streets. We had a mammogram bus in a neighborhood every quarter. We were out there passing out literature about the bills we just recently passed, providing ice cream to the kids. It's having town halls. It's going to the churches and talking about what recently happened. It's the only way that for me that I've seen to be able to break through, because understandably so many in our community are just like, you only come around in August and September and then you disappear. Or when the wins happen, you don't include us in the wins. For example, a piece of legislation that I passed this year that unfortunately was vetoed by the governor was I had a bill to increase offshore wind development. What did I make sure to do, including that bill? I made sure that an HBCU was named in that bill to be a part of it. And that's what we have to do is that when our communities need to see the tangible results of when they elect us and go back and say, hey, I know there's dozens of things that Brother Chapman is doing right now in this region. I know that, myself and, Brother Don Scott and Askew have made lives better, but we have to take that message to the people that my Instagram and my Twitter and my, TikTok isn't enough, that I have to go, on the ground and take that directly and shake another brother's hand and say, what ails you? And say, I either did that or let me figure out a way to fix that. And that's how, to me, that's how we're going to be able to increase that, because the only way people really feel invested a lot of times outside of like you stated, like a family obligation of something, is that saying that, oh, me voting is going to make my life better, not me voting is a duty.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Brother Fagan's captured it so well. It is, and so I'll add to the conversation by taking it in a different way and talking about. I think there's opportunity for us as a state and a country to start to look at the culture of voting and what is it going to take for us to change the culture of just voting. You go to countries in Europe, voting might be mandatory. It might be a holiday. It might be, it's elevated in a way where it's not a chore. It's a part of being patriotic. We have a lot of people that want to be fake patriotic nowadays. But one of the best ways to be patriotic is to use the power of your vote, and not just go to vote and walk away, but engage with candidates, challenge them on what they're going to do. I want to say it's Germany that has like a 90 to 95% voting rate, right? That's unheard of around anywhere in America. But that's their regular standard.
Brother Chapman, before you go further, I just want to point out that I hit 55% almost, and people were amazed. 55, right. I hit 50. Yeah, I hit 55%. People, and that's because it took me like knocking doors for 2 years and telling people to come and vote. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to point that as like 55% is seen as like, and it's seen like an incredible.
Absolutely.
That puts
Absolutely.
in perspective.
That does. I mean, that is that's how far we as a country have kind of fallen, because we don't, just across the country and even down to the localities, we are not hitting huge numbers in vote totals, and we should, because of the issues that local folks are talking about, whether at the local level, whether at the state level, and particularly at the national level. I think Brother Fagan's definitely covered the candidate side, but figuring out ways and laws and policies to enhance the opportunity to vote. I mean, I would say, I hate to be partisan, but I think you see only one party kind of pushing forward to try to get more people to vote versus trying to find ways to weed out people from voting. I don't think it needs to be that. It needs to be allowing people to have the opportunity to express themselves through their power of vote. Again, you see this in other countries that want to say that they're progressive. They allow and not just allow people to vote. They recognize the impact, and they celebrate that. We need to have a culture where we celebrate voting, and have a high standard for turnout. Yeah.
Well, I am grateful that both of you were able to join us, and I wanted to give the last 10 minutes to the two of you to share what you want. What is one thing that we didn't ask that you would like to discuss? Let's start with Delegate Fagans, and then have Brother Chapman close us out.
Yeah, and so one of the big things that our communities need to understand is the process of budgets, and at the federal, at the state, and at the local level. Follow the money. I wish I could spend all my days just learning about the budget at the state level, because once you start understanding that, you start understanding where the values really are. And where, and for example, I had 2 budget amendments that were vetoed by the governor. $500,000 was vetoed towards having teachers offset child care, and 200,000 was vetoed by the governor to create a recreational area for victims of sexual assaults. If you had told that to anybody, they were like, "Oh no, that's not something the other side would ever veto." But that was just one small part of what's happening. So I say that to say, having regular digestible ways for our communities to understand where the dollars are going, because once people start seeing sometimes where these dollars are going, their votes might change.
I hate going after Brother Fagans, I'll tell you that. Because the brother is right on point. Like, it is about budgeting. It is about where the money is. It's our budget season right here in Alexandria right now. And the conversations that council is having right now. I'm in a fight with some folks around, taking some money from um, uh, an office for climate change that wasn't using it and putting that towards our schools. To me, that's a very simple thing. It's 1 year money, but we have such a need for education that we need to do that. But we just don't have people that understand where our money's going and where we're showing our values, and being able to connect with local officials and say, hey, why are you supporting X, Y, and Z? You know, are you supporting our kids the way we need to? Are you supporting our communities? Are you supporting our small businesses in the way we need to? Those things are hugely important. I think I'm in I love my hometown, and we are in a good place around that support from city council, but that's not consistent all over the country. It's not consistent all over the Commonwealth. Um, we definitely need folks to roll up their sleeves and lock in and look at how the money is being spent in their community and how is that money going to affect particularly communities that are at risk. Because it's as it's been said, the community is only strongest as its weakest link and the most at risk folks. If you're at risk, communities are not thriving and surviving in your locality, you've got a bigger problem. And many times you don't have leaders that are willing to call that out. Sometimes you don't have leaders that are willing to kind of change the way things are done in order to make sure those communities are getting the supports they need. And so I would definitely ask folks who listen to this to commit to gaining a new understanding of what's happening around you. Whether you're looking at the local budget, whether you're looking at the state budget, and where you're looking at the priorities, and then reaching out to somebody in office and asking them some questions.
Yeah, one
Wait,
one final thing I would
yeah,
say is that outside of the budget area, something that we're doing down here in the Hampton Roads area for alphas is we're creating a list of alphas who want to be involved in the process on
Mhm.
commissions and boards. You know, I was brother Hawkins, Maurice Hawkins always told me, and he was always taught that some of the best interests of alpha are outside of what happens in our meetings. It's about putting, because we're able to directly speak to, you know, our interests when we're put it at the table. And so next
Okay.
year, you know, if we're able to, you know, on the Democratic side, to able to get who we want elected in terms of Abigail Spanberger and you know everyone else on the ballots, there's going to be a lot of boards and commissions up, and we need to have those names now, pre-screened, your interests ready to go. So when myself and others get those requests of saying, hey, who do you want to put on board and commission for veterans, for education, for technology, I'm gonna submit a list and say, here's the people I'm thinking about right now. And we've got alpha men, and we've got, you know, sisters in all of our communities who are doing the work, who need to be on those boards and commissions, who have the experience. And I'm not putting anybody up just because they are famous or because they know me. I'm going to put somebody up who can move the needle on these boards and commissions. And so I challenge all of us, you know, within our chapters, to go back to our meeting saying, hey, who's our elected representative at the state house? Okay, well, let's have a meeting with them and saying, hey, you know, what is your process being involved in boards and commissions? And would you be willing to take some names of brothers that we know who I think would be influential in certain areas? And that's how I think we increase, you know, when we're not just talking about, you know, it's more specific in terms of, you know, what we can do at Alpha. But that's how what we have to do at the community level as well. You know, the men and women who aren't involved, you know, in D9, who are doing the work, who need to be, who we need them representative on these boards and commissions. Because I'm telling you, come next year when it happens, a lot of these boards and commissions are going to be changing, and we need to have those names now, so we're not worried about, oh, who do I put here, who do I put there, or because if we don't, somebody's name's gonna be put in.
I love that. And I was thinking that it's like, man, get that list, man. If it's a Google form, start sending that out now.
I'm gonna share y'all with the form that we're using now to say, hey, if you're interested, let us know. So I'll share that. You can share that with, you can copy and
it's going in the
duplicate
group
it.
chat. It's going out.
Yeah.
It's going out today. It's going out today. So brothers, and one, I think one thing I want to appreciate is that the approachability of you two brothers. I did that. Brother Peters and I did that Alpha Day on the Hill in Virginia, and
Thank you for
just being
coming
able
out.
to connect and in real time really felt like, it wasn't the ivory tower, right? That this is real life, and we can be a part of this connection. So brothers, as we end, what are the best ways for those listening or watching this later to connect with you, to ask questions, to engage as our elected officials, so that we can make sure that those that watch this later will see it, and I'll also put it in the show notes for both you two gentlemen.
Yeah, so quickly for me, my email is info@michaelfagans.com. Please send any of your questions, concerns. One thing I like to say is get involved. Get involved in these campaigns. Either donate your dime, your money, your energy. We've got elections, as Brother Chapman knows, we got elections every year in Virginia. So there's somebody running for something, from dog catcher up to president. So get involved. And on my socials, it's Mike Fagans on basically everything. Tap in. Like I'm always trying to connect, especially with our fellow brothers.
Excellent.
Perfect. And for me, if you want to email me, it's john.taylor.chapman@alexandrava.gov. You can also find me on Facebook, obviously, John Taylor Chapman. And then all my socials are usually J_Chapman99, whether I'm on Facebook, whether I'm on Twitter, whether I'm on Instagram, whatever it is. Feel free to reach out, ask any question. Love to get folks on the phone and chat like this. So definitely more than willing to engage folks.
I love it. Well, I'm gonna take y'all off, so don't be abrupt when I take you off screen. But thank you so much, brothers. And we're gonna wrap up and end the show.
Thanks so much, brothers.
Thank y'all.
So I took myself off.
All
right. All right. Well, thank you to all those that listened, watched, or those going to listen later. This is part one of a two-part series. We'll be coming back next Wednesday, same time, 8 p.m., with some different guests. Thank you to our brothers that joined us tonight to share their wisdom. This is part of the Voteless People, Hopeless People of Theta Rho Lambda, Positive Philter, and Progress for all lumped together. We're all trying to use this opportunity to share a voice. But please tune in next week for the same type of discussion about voter participation, voter engagement, and why elections like the one coming up in November matter. Anything you want to leave? Parting words, Brother Peters.
No, you said it all. Thank you so much for attending, and tune in to us next week. Same Positive Progress time, same Positive Progress channel. 06, brothers.
06.